This fine body of men you see before you, representation of musketeers from the English Civil War period, a political struggle that split the British Isles two ways between 1642 and 1651. Boiled down, it could be said, is God king or is king God?
God save the king.
The armies of Charles I went to war against armies raised by the Parliament, which was essentially two wings of government that went to war against each other. And because many of the commanders were incompetent amateurs, but they were enthusiastic, that's why it dragged on for 9 years with a couple of breaks. 1649 saw the final defeat and execution of the king. He was the only English monarch legally executed by a court of law. He was beheaded in Whitehall on the 30th of January 1649. After that, England was ruled as a theocratic republic under Oliver Cromwell until Cromwell's death in 1658. After a period of internal turbulence, the republic finally fell apart, and the old king's son, who became Charles II, who had been living in France during this time, was invited by the government to return and claim his rightful throne once again. And we've had a monarch on the throne of this sceptred isle ever since. Soldiers you see here are musketeers. One of them is armed with his father's weapon, a caliver from about 1600. So this, to our period, this would be about 40, 50 years old. There's a French pattern, early firearm. Armies of the English Civil War period were different from armies that had come before. There were far more black powder weapons. You had mass production of muskets. The musket is what Mr. Tinnerman has here. Hold it up and up, sir. This is a smoothbore muzzle loading musket, an effective lethal range of about 100 yards, which is about from here past the cook tent to that house over there. It would fire a lead ball about the size of a Malteser, and I say that not because we had Maltesers in the 17th century, but because everybody here knows how big a Malteser is, even if they're wearing funny clothes. That's just the image everyone said. A lead Malteser of about 1 1/4 ounce weight, but at range would punch a hole in your chest the size of a pound coin, and an exit wound the size of a £2 coin. Even more painful for about half a second, and then it would all be over. Soldiers also issued bladed weapons. Bayonet had been invented, but because we had soldiers with pikes, 12-foot, 15-foot spears, bayonets didn't really come in until after the Civil War had finished. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drill these two musketeers in the postures of how to correctly hold their guns. Then we're going to dry load. We can pretend to load. We can't do shooting here this weekend, unfortunately. That'll give you an idea of the speed of loading by rote from my commands and loading in their own time. From here, I would give the command, give rest to your musket. Because 3 is the magic number, all the drill commands are done in 3s, and to help them, the drummer would strike 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, thus. That is the position that they would have if they were going to start loading their muskets, and we'll see about that in a moment. From here, you could shoulder your musket. Shoulder your musket! Okay. The musket is lifted out of the hand, brought across right-handed in one hand, and you roll it across the front of your torso, fits on your left shoulder, and your left hand falls into place. And that is how, fall in please, drummer. I'm going to march the troops up here and back again just to show you. English march, please. Ready to march! March! On! We will leave our depot to go to the enemy. I always have to be at the front because I'm in charge. I'm not just saying that. The drummer is a junior officer, so the drummer falls in behind me. We're going to go back to place. Prepare to march. March on! And it's left foot on the beat. And that's, see, modern soldiers parading today. This is how it all began. Right hand about face. Drummer, you may fall out. So, the very basics of handling a weapon in a standing position and marching. Many more musketeers, be a long column. Sergeants, corporals would be amongst the men, keeping order, keeping discipline, making sure everyone's where they're supposed to be. I can't run the entire thing myself, and as we all know, if you want something done, give it to somebody else and delegate. So yes, now, loading. Give rest to your muskets, gentlemen. Give you a match, sir. These are matchlock guns, precursors to the flintlock. Flintlock, of course, made famous from the Waterloo period, Alamo, even up to the start of the American Civil War, then superseded by percussion cap. The matchlock, very simple, very reliable weapon. Muzzle loader and the ignition system. I have a piece of match here. This is one I made earlier. This is a piece of household sash cord, soaked, impregnated in saltpeter, KNO3, potassium nitrate. That makes it burn hot and it burns slow. The weave of the cord burns it down to a tight point, and that becomes important later on. Loading the musket. The priming pan at the rear end of the weapon. Open your pan. You right there, sir? They would then handle your primer. Priming charge of fine gunpowder. And prime your musket. Powder goes in to fill the priming pan. We can give you a closer look at the weapons when we're done. Close your pan. Didn't close the cover, powder falls out. Blow off your loose powder. Cast off your loose powder. So there's no excess powder on top of the priming pan because you've got your lit match in the other hand and you don't want it to go off before you want it to. Cast your musket around to the left. Trail your butt on the ground if you wish. This gentleman's caliber is shorter than the musket, and he knows it well enough that he can have it loose in his hand. He can, in theory, load on the march. Mr. Tinnerman is a more recent recruit. He has the rear end of his gun on the ground for stability. Handle your charge. Each of these little bottles, the bandolier is a collective name, each of these contains enough powder for one shot. Charge your musket. And you preload that before we went on. You then leave it open, so as you go down, as you load fire, you have an idea of how many you have left. Theory was, when everyone's fired 10 or 12 shots, everyone's empty, and in theory you are rotated out of the line of fire, back to your base, go to the gunpowder wagon, and you recharge. And in theory, if the battle is still going on, you can be rotated back into the line and you're good to go. And you have a ball, the lead Maltese that I mentioned earlier. Charge your musket with ball and wad. Wadding would be a scrap of material, scrap of paper, maybe even a large enough leaf. Push that into the muzzle. Handle your scouring stick and withdraw. Piece of wooden dowel. Ram home your charge. Into the muzzle, shorten it, yes. Make it manageable, ram it down, all the charge, all the material is tamped down to the bottom of the barrel, and any air is evacuated by the ramming motion, which means when the gun goes off, all the force is projected forward out of the muzzle. It increases the range. Withdraw your scouring stick, reverse, shorten, and return. You always put the rod back the same way, so only one end gets covered in filth. If you put the mucky end down the groove of the underside of the barrel, it could get stuck there, and in a tight situation, that might be the last thing that you would want to happen, because you can't load your gun. You rest your muskets. So, the guns are now loaded and ready to fire. Handle your match and blow upon your coal. So you blow on the burning end, creating a white hot point. Cock and try your match. The match is placed in the movable arm, the serpent, which is linked to the trigger. Mr. Hancock's trigger is a sear bar, that is an earlier method. Mr. Tinnivan's trigger is a more familiar kind, not unlike a modern gun. Enemy to your 4, preset. Open your pan. Prepare to give fire. Give fire. Back. Assuming both the guns go off, recover. And they recover to the rest. The guns are up. They take the match out, serpent, and they're ready to begin the game again. They can reload from this position. So, what I'd like you to do now, obviously in battle you can't do that, you can't give all those commands, it would take forever. All the loading and firing commands are boiled down to a two-worder, which is everything except point the gun and shoot. So what you do, I would tell them to make ready. That's everything that they've remembered. So you see now how quickly they are. When made ready, present to the 4 and give fire. So even though they're just pretending, you get an idea of how quicker they can load on their own time. You find your own time if you're ready. That's it.
Bang.
That's that
Bang.
much quicker.
This time.
Stop it. So a step forward. Stand down, get some shade, get some water, gentlemen. Well, a variety of tunes that we could use for marching. We've had the English. Could you demo the French march, please? German march. And so on. If you would have a corps of drummers, 4 or 6 drummers, if you achieved a miracle and everyone plays the same tune at the same rate at the same time, it can be almost hypnotic. Yeah? Hypnotic as you go on into battle. It gets everyone in that headspace that you need to be. So we get up to the line of battle, and it's time to earn our pay. If we need to push forward and drive the enemy from the field and win, I would ask the drummer to play the charge. Any resemblance to the opening riff of Black Sabbath's Iron Man is a pure coincidence. We pitch in, but all their friends have arrived, and it's time to flee, time to retreat. We don't break and run, because that will get everybody killed, because we'll just send in the cavalry and we'll get turned into dogfood. So what we do instead is we withdraw, facing the enemy in good order, keeping our friends with us, keeping our cohesion, keeping our ranks and files, giving the enemy a couple of volleys on our way out as a thank you and goodbye, and we'll see you next week. And for that, we need the drummer to play the retreat. So we can retire one step at a time, everyone can see where everybody is, and we come away in one piece. if we retire with our drums and colours and everyone is in a reasonable state of repair, no shame, because no man can fight off an entire army, and if the numbers are too great and the danger is too great, nobody needs a pile of dead heroes. Thank you, drummer. You may step down, get some shake, get some water. As an officer of infantry from the English Civil War, a royalist officer, officers did not wear a uniform like other soldiers, like the gentleman over there. Officers wore their own clothes. This is a civilian suit, quite a posh one. It's got gold buttons, it's got braiding on it, it's a little bit fancy, it's a little bit bling, because people wore their wealth in the 17th century, they didn't hide it away in banks. My badge of rank is this red silk sash or scarf, as it was known, around my waist. Helped keep everything contained at my age. He also wore them shoulder to hip, in more like you would expect a sash to be worn these days. And this is a visual cue to everyone that I am an officer, and they'd wait for my word of command to tell them what to do. And that below me, I'm a captain. There would be a lieutenant, or yes, a lieutenant. You're only a lieutenant if you're in the Navy. There would be an ensign. Ensign is the lowest rank of officer. Their job is to carry the colour, the flag if you're the standard. And then you've got sergeant, corporal, file leader, and then the enlisted men themselves. I might have a polearm, a shorter spear, about 8 feet long. I use that to defend myself. I haven't got one today. Or use it as a yardstick to keep the lines and ranks and files as they should be. I've got this as well, and as a gentleman I would have attended fencing school, so I would know exactly what to do with this to ruin someone's afternoon. Gentlemen habitually carried swords during the 17th century, so everyone that carries a sword is a gentleman, allegedly. There you are. And I think that kind of brings our little display to an end. Thank you very much. You've been great sports here in this heat.